begin in Lagos State, as the re-election bid of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu got a major boost yesterday as high-profile stakeholders in the All Progressives Congress, APC, endorsed the president for another term of 4 years at a forum in Lagos. Although the endorsement did not come as a surprise, given Tinubu's tight hold on the politics of the state since 1999, it was significant for a man who lost the state in the last presidential election. This time, all the stakeholders seem to have come together in unison to give him the nod, and they're leaving no stone unturned in that regard. The decision was reached by thousands of the party's chieftains and members during the APC Stakeholders Forum 2025 held at Echo Hotels and Suites, Victoria Island. While ministers, federal lawmakers and other Lagos supporters rolled out some of the major achievements of the government, the party leadership staked 20 million naira prize money for any local government with the highest registered voters. Well, now we shift our attention to the opposition, as the Federal High Court in Abuja has reserved judgment in a suit seeking to stop the planned national convention of the People's Democratic Party over alleged breaches of the party's constitution. Justice James Omotosho fixed October 31st for ruling after final arguments were taken from all sides. 3 senior PDP officials, including Imo and Abia state chairman, are asking the court to halt the November 15 to 16 convention in Ibadan, claiming Congresses weren't held in 14 states, violating the PDP Constitution and Electoral Act. The plaintiffs, through Joseph Daudu, SAN, argued that INEC must supervise valid Congresses. But defense lawyers Paul Erokoro and Eitayo Jegede, SAN, insist that the matter is internal and not for court interference. Well, a ruling in favor of the plaintiffs could derail the PDP's push to elect new national officers. That's ahead of the 2027 elections. Now to the economy, as the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited remitted 10.073 trillion naira to the Federation account between January and August 2025. That's according to the company's September 2025 monthly performance report released yesterday. The cumulative figure represents statutory payments from oil and gas operations over the first 8 months of the year, with the National Oil Company recording 4.26 trillion naira revenue in August alone. The remitted funds include proceeds from crude and condensate sales, gas sales, royalties, taxes and other payments due to the Federation. The remittance in August was an increase of about 1.21 trillion naira compared to July. Now, this is against the company's cumulative remittance of 8.86 trillion naira to the Federation account between January and July 2025, underscoring its growing role as the country's fiscal anchor despite persistent industry challenges. Now to the Senate, as the Nigerian Senate has taken a tough stance against sexual offenders, recommending life imprisonment for defilement. The upper legislative chamber also pushed for a minimum of 10 years jail term for anyone who detains and has carnal knowledge of anyone without the consent of that person. Our Rice correspondent Omo Bazwaye tells us more.
Federal lawmakers in the Senate returned to plenary on Tuesday, and we are required to consider for concurrence 3 separate bills from the House of Representatives. The first, and perhaps most engaging, is the Criminal Code Act Amendment Bill 2025 that seeks to provide stiffer punishments for crime offenders in Nigeria. After initial procedural hitches, they were quickly corrected. The Senate slammed a hefty 10-year jail term on persons who detain and have carnal knowledge of another person's without their consent. The Senate hard stance follows a motion by Senator Peter Nweboin for stiffer punishment from 5 years to 10. On penalty for defilement, Senate rejected a 20-year jail term suggested by Senator Adamu Shiomole and settled for a stiffer punishment of life imprisonment for offenders, pushed by Senator Adamu Alero.
Those involved in defilement should suffer greater punishment. I propose that it should be 20 years if you defile an underage.
Yeah, Pakistan or what have you. It's capital punishment, but here we can reduce it to life imprisonment.
But the issue of abortion was a tougher hurdle for the Senate to cross, even after it had rejected a 10-year jail sentence for offenders. It was difficult to define when abortion would be legal or illegal, merciful or callous.
For instance, if the person has medical issues, the person can go and say, I want to terminate that pregnancy. So at what stage the person who decides to say, I want to terminate a burden on me, when will you now say it's unlawful?
After going back and forth on the matter, the Senate resolved to step down the bill for further consideration. But just as the president of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, hits the gavel, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan raises a point of order to speak on the matter that was already concluded.
I'm a woman, and abortion has to do with women.
Yes, Senator. That when a matter has been concluded and you have dropped the gavel, in this particular case, to allow for more conversation, if you grant exemption to distinguish Senator Natasha, then you must extend the same extension to us, in which case our rules will become meaningless.
Citing Order 52, Akpabio subsequently ruled Akpoti-Uduaghan out of order. The bill is then referred to the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Legal Matters and Human Rights for further legislative action. It will revert to the Senate in 2 weeks. Omo Bazwai, Orange News.
Putting their endorsement forward, which comes as no surprise, no surprise whatsoever. And yeah, of course, she's being sarcastic.
The city has delivered.
Exactly. NNPC as well in the news, and of course our favorite PDP always in the news. Several issues to unpack.
All right, several issues, very limited time, so I'll pick one or two of them and allow you both to unpack the others. Okay, so first of all, let me speak on a very important news this morning, which is the last one you took around. And I want to say that the Senate was quite busy yesterday, went through a few motions, pushed a few motions, and had quite a robust debate on in the hallowed chambers. And that's very good, because we often talk about the time of recess that they have and how much time they have to actually do the work of lawmaking, or in the National Assembly. But what they've now said, based on the motion that has been passed, which still has to be assented by the president, was transmitted from the House of Representatives, which is to increase the sentence for crimes that are around the defilement of a child, which is a welcome development. However, there's still a few kinks here and there. So what they're proposing is life imprisonment, up from, I believe it was 5 years as a minimum sentence in the current law. But what a number of people would then ask is, what is the definition of a minor or of a child in Nigeria? Because this has come up for debate a number of times. According to the Child's Rights Act of 2003, which sought to domesticate the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, the age of a child is 18 and below. However, for this to become law in Nigeria, it has to be domesticated across the 36 states of Nigeria. Whilst most states have domesticated it, not all states have done so. So currently, we're still with the Child and Young Persons Act, which defines a child as under 14 years old. And so for this defilement of a minor to really make a lot of sense, which I must say is at least we've started off on a very good note in terms of a direction to the protection of children and minors in Nigeria, we must also look at lobbying the states which governments have not, or the State House of Assemblies have not ratified the Child's Rights Act of 2003. I think that's a very important one to have, because when you bring a matter before the court, some states might argue that, well, this child is not a minor because the child is over 14 years old. And we know that at 18 is when the United Nations recommends. But I think it's very good, and I believe that more pressure should be on those states to ensure they domesticate the Child Rights Act. Now, going on to rapists, I know a number of people had wanted, some of the senators had wanted more years in terms of the number of minimum sentencing, but they agreed on 10 years. And that's also a win, at least moving forward away from the 5 years initial that it was. So that's brilliant. Hopefully this will act as a deterrent. I also wish they would debate on the floor of the House, since we're talking about matters like this, around domestic violence, so that we're able to protect women and men, whether in their homes, in marriages, and also whether it's a relationship, so that we really protect both men and women. Like I said earlier this week, we have had quite a number of high-profile cases in recent times that border around domestic violence issues. And we have also seen a number of unfortunate deaths as a result of domestic violence. And so it's also time that on the floor of in the hallowed chambers, they actually debate this and they find a stiffer punishment to deter domestic violence and also loss of lives in Nigeria, and also, of course, the effect it has on children and their psychology. So good one there. I think there also are debates around protecting the Dangote refinery and other Nigerian industries, businesses in Nigeria. That's still up for debate. There's also an investigation, and I think this is quite important, around monies up to about $4 million or over $4 million that was released by certain developmental agencies towards the towards eradication of polio, AIDS, and I think TB and tuberculosis, and how that money was spent over time. Because we hear money like this being allocated to fight certain diseases, whilst Nigeria still remains the country with some of the highest prevalence of this disease in the world. So how come we keep having money, from these agencies, USAID and the likes, Gates Foundation, and yet we still have this, this issue being prevalent? I think it's well in order that our investigation has been launched, and in 4 weeks we hopefully get a report as to how the money was spent and we get some kind of accountability. Now, moving away from that and talking about accountability, yes, the NNPC has come out to say that they've made 10 trillion naira in 8 months, but what has I think a cable report this morning I read about its FAC being able to transfer or remit to FAC, that they haven't been able to do that in so long. So this money that they are announcing, what has it been used for? Where is it going to? And then if you look at the numbers month by month, the NNPC actually lost money this month based on the previous month. Now, the excuses they've given in terms of the profit margin is that, the strike by the labor unions affected output, petroleum crude oil output, some scheduled maintenance affected output. But I think the critical question is that when are we able to meet the 2 million barrels per day promise that the NNPC has made over time, so that Nigeria is able to increase its resource base? We know that currently the oil and gas sector, NNPC, is one of the biggest contributors when it comes to the funding of the budget. We need this in order to ensure that we don't put pressure on taxing people when we have a national oil company that ought to be increasing revenue base for Nigerians. So some of the critical questions, I also hope that in their report we'll finally get an answer as to what's happening with the refineries. At what point are we going to get some form of, are we going to sell it off? What is the decision? Is money still going into the maintenance of the refineries? And what are we going to do? Or is there going to be another timeline as to when we should begin to see these refineries work? So some of the questions that I had this morning for the NNPC. Now, moving on to going to Lagos State with the stakeholders forum, APC stakeholders forum in Lagos, and talking about the endorsement, the massive unanimous endorsement of the president for a second term. Despite our conversation around electioneering and campaign season, and as stipulated in the Electoral Act 150 days before the day of election, we have seen pockets here and there of semblance of campaigning and electioneering. And so this is another conversation why civil society organizations have come on really hard to say that we need to respect the law. I understand the endorsement can be said, we're not campaigning, we're just saying he has done well, and we're saying we're putting our weight behind him. But there is an element of campaign when we have strong or very significant stakeholders come out to put their put their mouth and their resources behind a particular candidate. I think that's one important thing. Also, by stating money to mobilize, I think it's good to encourage mobilization of voter registration. But one thing that I'll also point out is that the next election cycle is going to be heavily monetized. Already, we're already hearing money being thrown out, 20 million for the local government that has the highest mobilization, 10 million for the ward that has the highest mobilization. And we then have a look again at how elections in Nigeria is for the highest bidders sometimes. And money plays a critical role. Again, tighter legislation around it so that there's a fair playing ground. Finally, all eyes on INEC. We can say all that we want to around, well, let's get more people registered to vote, let's get our election campaigns going on. But if INEC is not able to prosecute a free and fair election, unfortunately, mobilize all you want, there will still be voter apathy because the people do not believe in the sanctity and the transparency and fairness of election processes in Nigeria. So that's a task for Professor Amokiton as it takes office. May INEC be strong as an institution towards the next election so that we're able to give the people a voice, that the power will rest truly in the office of the citizen.
Okay, so let me start from Lagos. It will be travesty. It will be, I don't know what to call it, if the APC stakeholders in Lagos do not endorse their father. President Tinubu is their father. He's the head of the APC clan in Lagos and in Nigeria. So endorsing him, in fact, is academic. They didn't even need to come out openly in an event to endorse him. They've already endorsed him long ago. But you see, the hypocrisy in this country is that INEC is blind to it. Obviously, that's not a political activity, isn't it? For the elections coming up. No, it's not a campaign. You don't say that. INEC is blind. You see, when it comes to APC, it's not a campaign. If other political parties do it, it becomes a campaign. Voter inducement has started in earnest. Yeah. You are putting 20 million forward for people to register to vote. That's voter inducement. People must be encouraged to register of their own free will. Once you put money in the cycle, it's voter inducement. Just like we called out trader money a couple of years ago, that was voter inducement. This is a level of voter inducement. If you tell INEC will turn their eye to it. They will say, no, we can't see it. In fact, they will say, prove empirical facts. Maybe the money is going to the people that are able to mobilize the most. We are waiting for INEC's drone that they say they will use to monitor votes. As long as the APC does it, they look away from it. If another political party does it, it's travesty. That's the kind of country we live in. I call out the hypocrisy of the APC because they are the government in power. If any other government comes in power, these are going to call out their hypocrisy. It's never personal. I'm just a patriot. So we are waiting to see our next reaction to all of this endorsement and counter-endorsements. The best INEC will probably do is to write a general long-winded statement. That's even INEC, if they have time, if they've not finished settling the 1.5 billion they are requesting to be able to get voters registered. The other day we said it here, and I thought it was because we said it, that's why the NNPC too quickly brought out their figures when we're talking about NUPRC, because we gave a jab and we say, where is the NNPC going to bring out their figures? So you see, these attempts to turn governance into propaganda, where everybody's bringing out figures, but we're not seeing the after effects. Yes, NNPC claims about 10 trillion in 8 months. I'm happy that you stated that report from Agora Policy, where they said that the money is not being remitted to the FAC accounts. That trillion they are talking is even an unaudited report in the first place. So it's not an audited report. And when you look at the revenue they say they made compared to the profit in the end, there's a big far cry. Yeah. So it is when we see the audited report, we will know what is going to Operation Gazelle and other swaps that they have done, other encumbrances. We will even know how much they are spending on refineries that are moribund. You were asking a very important question. What are they going to do with refineries? Let me tell you what they've said they want to do. They said they need $60 billion more. After the $3 billion that they gave them that didn't work. Who said it? Ujulari said it when he was meeting stakeholders of Pengasin and the like. And that's why the other day when Pengasin was fighting a private refinery Dangote, my grasp with them is that if they have gone to protest against NNPC and say, put the refinery to work, I will have accepted. I get a lot of calls. I got a random call yesterday by someone that said he was part of those that were fixing some things in the Kaduna refinery, that the project has not been stored, that a company who seconded the project to them, and in fact, I didn't even get the full gist. The question we should ask them is, we will now know how much they are still spending on refineries that are not producing. Because over the years, they are also paying salaries and encumbrances for refineries that are not producing.
True.
You remember how we told them that what they were doing was a blending plants. People came to protest outside Arise TV and carry placard. Thanks to Ozzy. It was Ozzy that also showed the shenanigan how they were sharing money after the protest. You see, it is righteousness that builds a nation. Sin is a reproach. See, we can decide to keep quiet and just come up here every morning and look like nothing is happening and say things to favor people, and Nigeria keeps getting damaged. But you see, when I sleep every night, it's the conscience and the heartbeat of the innocent people that make us talk every day. And that's why we are so quick to say, okay, they are putting money in FARC. Where is the money? Agora reports was saying what they are putting is a far cry to what they claim they are churning out. This was the same NNPC that told us lies about subsidy. After President Tinubu announced subsidy gone, they still went ahead to claim subsidy for about a year in this country, despite the fact that they told us subsidy gone. It was now, I think, early last year, they now said they have finally removed subsidy. I remember when Rotus and I was always plotting the numbers as saying that they are still paying subsidy. They said it's a lie, we don't know what we're talking about. Truth has been revealed. Just like how they say, oh, the merits of subsidy gone. I saw a propaganda document they released recently that they said this year they've only imported 40 million documents. Another 14 million liters of petrol. Another Punch document said, in fact, we are importing more than we're taking from local refineries. We've imported over 300 million liters this year. So you see, it is not by high-sounding headlines. You know, there's a British band that I love so much. It's called Mr. Noel Gallagher and the High-Flying Birds. And they sang a very popular song called Everybody's on the Run. So you see, when high-flying birds are putting up high-flying headlines, everybody needs to be on the run. Because we say we are making so much money, we can't fund our budget cycle. And they are gaping holes. So until we see where the corpses are buried in an audited report by the NNPC, I'll definitely take this as a pinch of salt. I think there was another story about child rights. And,
yes, defilement of minors.
But Ayo, you see, we live in a very hypocritical country. That's why I don't understand sometimes. And sometimes I get weary. Because the people you are fighting are those that are going to support the people that are oppressing them. Ayo, you ask a very important question. Why are most states not domesticated Child Rights Act? How will they domesticate it when it favors them? Is it not in this country that some people were pushing for underage bride? That we have to go on the campaign child not bride? Is it not in this country that we see government officials having sexual knowledge of underage people? So what kind of country are we living in? And then you see underage penetration, I think they will domesticate it. Yes, it's a good talk. Yes, they are saying life imprisonment, which is a good talk and everything. But the question is, will the law cut across everybody? That's when you will now know that there are some men that are above the law in this country. Yes, the law is supposed to be not a respecter of person, but for Nigeria, law, they look face. Law, they look face. And now, what does law look at? Are you in alignment with some people? Are you in alignment with power? So it's a good approach. I'm not saying it's not good, though, but I'm also saying the practical blowbacks. In a country where people do not respect women. I mean, we're talking about a clear case of beating the woman the other day or something like that. Have they not started settling? Have they not moved on like nothing happened? So let's continue. Let's enjoy it. Vimbai.
All right, let me very quickly start off, Rufai, where you finished, which is concerning the activities in the Senate yesterday, which by all means are a step in the right direction. It was refreshing to see the type of robust debate that took place. But the one thing that really did stand out to me, well, let me first start by congratulating the Senate on, making this move towards progressive resolutions that protect women and children, and even men as well, because some of the clearances that needed to have been made in the law, in the legal framework, were the fact that men had been left out of the context of rape as well. So those are progressive developments, and we applaud the Senate for their good work in doing so. However, the point of concern, in my opinion, is that knowing that we already have so few women in the Senate, it would have been a step in the right direction to see a lot more engagement from the women. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the videos that came from the Senate only show us the moment at which the motion, this is concerning abortion, the conversation around abortion. A lot of the videos only show us the moment that it was stepped down and Senator Natasha tried to vocalize a point of order to say that she had an input to make as a woman. And then unfortunately, from there it was derailed and she was unable to make her contribution. So without knowledge of the preceding events to that moment, it's difficult to really give full context to say, well, why was she not allowed to speak? Or is the context, why did she wait until the last moment to speak? So I hope we can get clarity on that. However, pro-life debates, abortion debates are huge conversations globally. And it is no surprise that this type of heated discussion would happen around this issue here in Nigeria. And I hope that it can be treated with the level of sensitivity and importance that it requires. And I hope that the women's voices will also be given an opportunity to make a meaningful contribution without playing the gender card. Of course, it goes without saying that in a Senate that has only 3 women in representation, their voices are more than important in ensuring that where these issues are concerned, their representation counts. So that was the one takeaway. Again, I said I'm seeking clarity to understand whether it was that she waited until it was too late to speak or whether it was that she was cut off from speaking completely, because we know that both scenarios are tenable. Now I'll come to Lagos State, which for me was intrigued me because of the several intricacies that we've been seeing happening with APC at the state level in Lagos. Now, where do we begin? Let's begin with the external threats to the party, which we saw in the 2023 elections, not at the gubernatorial level, but of course at the presidential election when we saw the outing of the Obedient Movement or the Labour Party, so to speak, which was a huge blow and a surprise to the party. So it is clear that they're not taking that for granted. Of course, we also know that there have been brewings around ethnic sentiment as well, and how that's also contributing to reshaping what we know as politics in Lagos State. So when you look at those external threats, then you now look at some of the internal challenges that APC in Lagos State is facing. What is that? We've seen the rancor that took place in the Lagos State House of Assembly with the impeachment of the speaker, and there was factionalization that happened and so forth, and the president had to intervene to create unity back in the state level of the party, which is something that we all know transpires behind the scenes, but to see it play out in such a loud and bold way was certainly an alarm bell, and it was something that opposition, I feel, should have taken an opportunity to latch onto, but unfortunately they missed that boat. Beyond that, internal challenges as well is that there's currently a succession battle when we are looking at where we're going for the gubernatorial seat for 2027. Of course, various schools of thought in that, and several opinions and a lot of speculation around where that is going to land. Would it be with the deputy governor, who also spoke yesterday, and his theme was around continuity. He celebrated what he felt were the achievements of Lagos State under Governor Sanwo-Olu, of course, which would reflect on his own input. And he put forward a case for continuity, of course, without directly referring to himself. What I also found interesting was the input of former governor and, of course, former minister Babatunde Fashola, who spoke on, he gave a lecture yesterday titled Voter Apathy and the Sanctity of Election in Nigeria's Budding Democracy. Now, several things stood out, but I'll take 2 points. The first is he said, where are our traditional voters? Now, he was making reference to the fact that when he won the election under Action Congress of Nigeria in 2011, he won with 1.5 million votes. That has not been seen before. That was not seen before in Lagos State, and it hasn't happened since then. Since then, you see around 700,000 votes, 800,000 votes for the person who wins the election. And then you see the opposition party always sitting around 300,000 votes, except for the year where Jimmy Agbaje went against Akinwumi Ambode, and Jimmy Agbaje was was able to get over 600,000 votes. But generally, the opposition has remained stagnant with around 300,000 votes. But you see that the incumbent, whether it be under AD, whether it be under Action Congress, now under APC, that number is no longer as compelling as it was in 2011. And the conversation is, does that mean that APC sacrificed their core followership to pursue federal ambition? Will federal ambition affect the APC at a Lagos state level negatively? And this is part of the charge that he was putting forward, and he was saying that, well, we need to go back to our traditional base. Now, in saying he needs to go back to the traditional base, to the APC core followers, he now made an interesting input, which was that he said that, oh, where are our children? Are our children coming to our rallies? Now, one might argue that this was in the broader context of the younger people. Is APC pursuing the inclusion of youth, of the youth movement? Because we know that the youth vote is widely represented by the Obedient movement here in Nigeria. However, if you also look at a different context, some people might say that if Babatunde Fashola is saying, where are our children? Is he potentially saying that maybe a Sheyi Tinubu is, excuse me, maybe there's a justification for a Sheyi Tinubu to be brought into the fold as we have this conversation about where the crown, if I may call it, is going to land in preparation for the 2027 election. So these are some of the things that I found to be quite pertinent, interesting discussions. But the major takeaway is the fact that at the Lagos state level, the party realizes that they are not where they should be, and they are coming back to the drawing board to see how they can align and create a unified and compelling force ahead of 2027, because it's clear that the challenge of 2027 is a real one. Now, just as I close, I'll close with some statements from the APC National Secretary, that's Mr. Ajibola Bashiru, who had said that, Nigerians should stop gaslighting APC, that APC should have all the seats in the Senate, all the seats in the House of Representatives. In fact, all the state houses of assembly should even be APC, that it's not a one-party state, and those saying that equates to a one-party state are gaslighting. I think we need to be careful with our rhetoric because in this season we are in, there's already a lot of sensitivities that are playing out. So yes, it makes for great bravado during a political speech. However, when you look at the repercussions and the impact that this has on our democracy as a whole, we have to be very restrained to ensure that a multi-party democracy continues to thrive and that APC focuses on being a competitive party rather than being a de facto one party or the ultimate party in Nigeria. Those are some of my takeaways.